By the end of July, Congress has to figure out how it will help millions of Americans who are still unemployed and struggling due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of a 2-week 4th of July recess, lawmakers will have just 11 days to decide whether or not to extend an extra $600 per week in federal unemployment benefits before they expire. Close to 50 million people have filed for unemployment since the pandemic began. And with cases surging across the U.S., some experts worry what will happen if Congress can't come to an agreement.
As usual, Democrats and Republicans are split over what the help for unemployed Americans should look like. Democrats want more benefits and more government spending to prop up the economy. Back in May, the Democratic-controlled House passed the HEROES Act. That's a $3 trillion rescue bill that included everything from extending that $600 per week unemployment benefit to another round of stimulus checks, to hazard pay for essential workers, and more aid to state and local governments. But the bill died in the Republican-controlled Senate as GOP lawmakers raised objections to all the government spending. They also objected to extending the unemployment program.
Instead of those extra unemployment benefits, Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman is proposing that people who return to work receive an extra $450 a week. A separate plan from Texas Republican Representative Kevin Brady would continue to give workers who accept a new job $600 a week for 2 weeks. Heidi Sherholtz, a senior economist and director of policy at the Economic Policy Institute, says although this is not an either-or situation between benefits and incentives, it should be noted that 1, there just aren't enough job openings for all the people who need jobs right now, and 2, there aren't many jobs that are safe to go back to during a pandemic. She believes extending benefits would have a greater impact on the economy as a whole.
When you have millions of people who are getting the extra $600 a week, and if you just cut that right off, you'd have millions of people who are all of a sudden not spending the money that they had been spending. So the goods and services that they would have demanded if that $600 hadn't been cut off, the people who would have supplied those goods and services lose their jobs. And then they don't have income, and the people who generate the goods and services that they would have spent their income on lose their jobs, and on and on and on. It's a real downward spiral.
Veronique de Rougy, a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, says she understands the desire to expand unemployment insurance during a crisis, but notes it can also create a disincentive to work. The exact number is unknown, but there are people in the system now making more money through unemployment insurance than through the jobs they previously held. And although members of Congress and political pundits have highlighted lawmakers' tight timeline to make a decision over the next stimulus package, de Rougy does not believe it would be a complete catastrophe if the July 31st deadline passes without a decision.
For one thing, we don't have any visibility of what this summer employment is going to actually look like. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of money that remains to be spent, either distributed through the Federal Reserve or actually distributed money that was authorized through the CARE Act. So before we rush to do more quickly, in a world that's like highly uncertain, why not just wait and see?
But there is an argument that if Congress does not come to an agreement, millions of jobs could be at risk as the U.S. attempts to fend off a huge surge in cases.
Every dollar we spend when the economy is really weak like this actually sets us up to be better off in the future. Like right now is not the time to actually worry about debt and deficit. That's not always the case. If we're in a big expansion, that's the time to start thinking hard about what are we going to do about the debt and the deficit. But at a time like this, it's better economically in the long run to make the investments now to get us out of this as fast as we can.
On the other hand, Washington can't keep spending forever, and the federal deficit is growing rapidly.
We went from a situation where we were fiscally responsible and heading to a $1 trillion deficit after 10 years of growth, right, which is crazy, to actually at the end of the year, the fiscal year, which is going to end in a few weeks, we're going to have $3.7 trillion deficit. we're going to have for the foreseeable future a very high level of deficit, an exploding level of amount of debt. And there's a moment where we have to say enough is enough. And actually, they have to be careful. Someone in Congress has to actually be the responsible adult and start to actually think about the debt too.